Hey there, YouTube. Shady Bills Garage here, and I'm going to come to you with what I believe is the best street bike I've ever owned, if not ever ridden. I've had this bike about 5 years, and I've never had a desire to sell this bike. I've never had another bike that I felt hit all the buttons as being a great street bike as this bike. I'm not saying it's the fastest bike I've ever had. I'm not saying it's the best handling bike I've ever had. I'm saying this is overall the best street bike. Bike for back roads, curvy back roads, riding aggressively, not a race bike, but a really good street bike that I've ever owned in my life. I'm going to break down some numbers that like Cycle World said. I'm going to say what that means in real life, and I'm going to tell you what the intangibles are, what you don't read on a spec sheet that makes this bike so goddamn good. All right. Obviously, it sounds like a rant, and I'm a little biased, and I am. I've had this bike I've had it about 5 years. I bought it used, but I just hit 30,000 miles on this bike. And I figured at 30,000, I should give it a review. It's just been a great bike. I've had to change the stator. I think it's very common. But otherwise, it's been a great bike. So what do we have? Instrumentation. We'll start with instrumentation. 13,000 RPM red line, digital speedometer, 30,000 miles. Also, let's see if I can show this. Do you see these little lights that just came on? As you get closer and closer to red line, I think starts around 10,000 RPM. They start to light up as you get closer and closer to red line. You have a clock, which I never set. A gear indicator, which you can see there, it goes into second. It goes back into neutral, back into first. Gear indicator, temperature gauge, neutral light, turn signal, or high beam turn signal, and a fuel. Unfortunately, there is no fuel gauge. All right, what are the intangibles that make this such a good bike? First off, the suspension is out of the box the best street suspension I've ever had. You can ride it aggressively, it's compliant, it feels good, it's never twitchy. You ride on a crappy back road, it's still compliant, not twitchy, it doesn't want to buck you off. You can put up a good pace on a crappy road and not feel like you're just getting bouncing off the ground, and your wheels feel like they're in contact on the ground. The other intangible, the throttle response on this. Now this is, as you see, cables. This is before stupid drive-by-wire bikes came out, where you turn the throttle, yes, it's fuel injected, and it's linear. Everything you do has a direct correlation to what the engine does. I've ridden so many bikes with modes, stupid modes, rain mode, and this, they all suck, all right? If you drive a bike before they did that, and you drive a bike after they added these modes, you're gonna go, these things suck. I understand you can't have traction control without giving drive-by-wire. I get it. I'll live without traction control. I don't need it. I really don't need it, all right? It just makes that on-off throttle transition not linear, not good. Lower horsepower bikes can get away with it because you don't feel it. Higher horsepower bikes, I've never ridden a good one. Tell me if there's one out there, but I came off an FC09 when I bought this bike, which was the goddamn worst throttle response, and the suspension was awful on bad roads, and it was a super fun bike. Great motor, mid-range was fantastic. I hated the bike on anything but a perfectly smooth road, and I had to run the bike in 2 gears lower than I wanted to because it was so goddamn twitchy that, you be in a turn, you get on the gas, it would twitch, it would unsettle the chassis. I sold that for this and never looked back. Yes, I gave up 20 horsepower or 17 horsepower, whatever they say. It was well worth it. All right, so let's get back to horsepower numbers, because that's what everyone probably sees on a spec sheet. Where does this stack up to everything else, and how does that mean in real life? All right, so according to Cycle World, I like Cycle World. Their dyno put this thing at 92 horsepower at 11,700 RPM, and 43 foot-pounds at 8,000 RPM. What does that mean? That means a quarter mile, if you're not a fat bastard like me, at 11.06 at 121 miles an hour and a top speed of 140 miles an hour. I've never taken a naked bike to 140 miles an hour. I don't think I want to. I have taken this to the drag strip. I personally did not run an 1106 at 121. I think I ran like an 11.7, I think at about 115, 116, if I remember correctly. So weight and skill, obviously, but mostly weight means a lot when you're running a quarter mile. I have a Royal Enfield 650. My son has a Royal Enfield 650, and he walks me because he's 80 pounds lighter than I am. So, you know, if you're with your friends and arguing about whose bike is faster, if your friend's 30 pounds heavier than you and you guys are close, trust me, you're faster. All right. What does that mean for other bikes? Other bikes in the same category. Okay, if you're buying one of these or you're looking at one of these, I guarantee you're looking at an FZ09. All right, FZ09, a lot more power, 107 horsepower at the wheel at 10,001 RPM, and 61.5 foot-pounds of torque. Motor-wise, you look at that spec sheet, you're like, why would I not buy the Yamaha? And that's why I bought the Yamaha first. I bought the XSR 900, which is the same thing as the FZ09, and hated that bike. It just wasn't compliant with the roads I ride. Maybe if I was like just driving straight roads in Florida, you know what? FZ09 all the way. All right. I live in New Jersey. I live in northern New Jersey. There's a lot of twisty roads. The roads I ride are all extremely twisty, no traffic. You're putting up a really good pace. Some roads are good, some roads not so good. This bike nails it. This bike is by far the best, most compliant street suspension of any bike I've ever ridden. I know I've said it before. Now, let's compare it to what you're going to say, okay, it's not that fast. It's old. It's 2009. I don't want a bike that, they're old. They're not very fast then. So let's say 2023 GSXR 600. No one would ever say that's a slow bike, all right? 102 horsepower at 13,500 RPM, 44 foot-pounds of torque at 11.5. I laid the dyno sheets over each other before I came out here between this and that GSXR. This bike has more horsepower and more torque until 10,000 RPM. After 10,000 RPM, it's goodbye. The GSXR is going to pull on you. It's also probably more dynamic with the full fairing, which is why it'll go almost 160, with this will do 140. But how often do you spend over 10,000 RPM? Look at your riding styles. Look at, truth. Be honest with yourself. How much time do you spend over 10,000 RPM? It's not very much. All right, unless you're a drag racer, unless you just ride a lot of really straight, long, flat roads, you don't spend much time over 10,000 RPM. Where you're riding, if you're riding back roads like me, you're running in that 6,000 to 9,000 RPM range, just pushing the bike at a nice pace, not trying to kill yourself. And this bike really, really shines. It's comfortable. I have these saddlebag brackets because I have soft bags. I've lent this bike out to friends who've taken it on, 800 mile, 3-4 day trips, and they've been comfortable the whole time. I'm going to sit on it. I'm 5'11". As you see, I can flat foot the bike. Handlebars, and you can obviously change the handlebars to anything you like. You can go lower, you can go higher, you can go wider. These are the stock bars. I haven't mucked with this bike because I like it stock. Here I am, I'm pretty much sitting pretty much straight up, maybe a 1 degree forward lean. My handlebars are, comfortable. And I gotta say the one thing, I'm just gonna end with this, that I haven't changed the exhaust. I always say I want to. But what really makes this bike sound good is the intake noise on this bike. Is by far the best intake noise of any bike I've ever heard. You hear it gulping the air in. It's loud because I don't have the exhaust on it. I hear the intake over the exhaust and it sounds glorious. I am not a, Triumph is the best bike in the world and anything you do is great person. In fact, I sold my Thruxton and bought a Royal Enfield, is how I like the Royal Enfield better, even though it's slower. It's just a better bike. And I have a Harley Street Glide for long tours. But when I want a good back road bike, you can't beat a Triumph Street Triple R. Or probably just any Triumph Street Triple 675, and I haven't driven the 765, but they went to drive modes, so I have a feeling I'm not going to like it as much. Thanks, YouTube. If you have any comments, let me know. Put them in the comments. If you happen to have one of the 675s and you have a 765 and you can compare the two, write it in the comments. I'd love to get some feedback on the newer ones because I haven't ridden one. Thanks. Bye.